I always thought that the harder I worked, the more money I made, the more healed I got from my past, the healthier I got, the closer I got to God, I would naturally find more people and be around more people, have more support from my people. And I've realized as over the past few years, I've kind of journeyed through that, moving to Florida. Obviously, when I first moved down here, I partied a little bit, which it wasn't an excessive amount. I just went out every now and then. So as I started bettering myself and going to the gym and going to church and trying to start businesses, I noticed my circle started getting a lot smaller. And I feel like that's always talked about in podcasts, but they really don't tell you how lonely it is. Like, you have friends that you have known forever, always relied on to do XYZ, that are now literally ignoring your calls and texts because they don't want to go to the gym with you. They don't want to go to church with you. They don't want to start a business with you. They don't even want to go sightseeing during the day. All they really wanted in your life was to go out and party. And when you were self-sabotaging, that's when they enjoyed you being around. There's this expectation, and people always talk about how better your life gets as you focus on different things from your inner circle. Like, you're going to make more money, you're going to do this, you're going to do this, you're going to be healthier, you're going to feel better. Nobody really explains that it's really not empowering. Like, there are so many nights where you're just sitting around restless and you've cleaned your house for the 4th time because you have nobody that wants to be around you unless you go out and party. And then there's this push and pull between your old self and your new self of, do I just go out because I miss human interaction? Like, I'm at home all the time. I miss being around my friends. And so do I go out? Do I lower my standards and do I go out and go do something that I really wouldn't care to do? But then you go out and you also feel lonely. So you're out at the bar or the club and all you're thinking about is wanting to go home. Honestly, there have been countless times where I'm standing in the bar, literally thinking to myself, why the hell did I even come? And then at this point, I already Ubered there. I've already bought drinks. And so now it's just going to cost me more money to go home. And so it's literally a waste of money and a waste of time, because I can't tell you how many times I've forced myself to go out when I didn't want to, just because I wanted to be around friends. And I'm literally the next morning looking at the charges on my card, seeing that between the Ubers and the drinks, I spent over $200. And with $200, I literally could have a great time at Disney World for the day. So it's just really difficult to kind of back into that and really weigh the cost benefit there. It's especially difficult when you're growing and changing. And one thing that I've noticed actually moving states is a lot of my friends that I was super close with in Colorado, as I've moved to Florida and been like working on myself, bettering myself, doing all these other things, my expectations of like what a night out looks different and what a day spent together looks different. And it's very uncomfortable when you're going through these growth phases and you're at a completely different phase in your life now, and then trying to still involve these other friends in your life. And it almost creates this like awkward tension when you get together of like, I don't know how to describe it, but it almost feels like when you're hanging out with your little sibling and you're like, okay, there's a clear maturity gap, but it's not even a maturity gap. It's just a priorities gap, but it feels when you're growing yourself like a maturity gap. And obviously these are people that you love, that you want to help better themselves. And so ultimately you have those conversations where you try and invite them to do other things, where you try and do this, and it turns into, honestly, resentment on their end because you aren't the same person either. And so they probably think you're a completely different person. They don't really want to be around you either. And maybe it's jealousy, maybe not. I mean, I can tell you when I was in like my partying phase and wanting to go out and do XYZ, I didn't like want to live people's lives where they were staying inside every weekend. That sounded really boring to me. And it wasn't like a judgment thing. It was just I didn't want to do that. And now I'm the opposite. Now I would rather stay inside every weekend than go out and party, because why waste my weekend? I only get 2 days off of work during the week. I would rather spend them like doing something fun. I think another thing that isn't really talked about, they always talk about being lonely when you're going through these growth phases, but what they don't talk about specifically is the kind of transitions between your friend groups and meeting new people that kind of align with those versus like transitioning out of your current friendships. I am definitely the kind of person that really, really struggles cutting people off. Like, it is so difficult. If somebody like reaches out after a couple months after I cut them off and is like, hey, I really want to chat and catch up, I'm not really gonna say no. It's very difficult for me to cut people off, and it's always been that way. I've always had holy moly if I could tell you what it's done to me in relationships. But I think that kind of transition of you have friends, and this happened down here to me as well, but I could always rely on them to respond to me if I wanted to go to live with a promoter and get a table, but I couldn't rely on them if I wanted to go to the beach, or I had an emergency and I needed somebody to let my dog out, or I wanted to start a podcast and I wanted them to come over and film an episode with me. I think finding that group of people that is very motivated is hard for me. I think it's hard for everybody. And finding one thing I've run into specifically as I've been going through this is a lot of people catfish you. They literally catfish you into thinking that they are somebody that you want in your life at the time. I've met people down here that tell me they are very Christian, looking to start businesses, enjoy doing like adventurous stuff like road tripping or sightseeing, not necessarily partying. They're looking to get away from that. And those same exact people are the only people that I ever see going out every weekend. It's almost like a catfish. So then you start becoming friends with them, you start hanging out with them, and then you realize very quickly that their priorities are not what they say. They aren't looking to better themselves. They want a better life. They want to say that they're doing all these things, but they're not. And I am not saying that there can't be a balance. I 100% think there is a balance. But what is very difficult is finding friends that you can reliably count on to be there when it comes down to bettering yourself, going to the gym, going to do business activities, going to network. That's the biggest one. I wish more than anything my friends would be like, let's go to a networking event. That would be amazing, but never have one of my friends wanted to go to a networking event. But my goodness gracious, do they want to go to the bar? It's the same thing. It's networking, but you have to drink and it has to be at night and the intentions are completely different. And trying to navigate those friends that our priorities were the same a year ago. And now I kind of don't want to do those things. And they try to guilt trip you and make you feel like, oh, that's not fair. You should be doing XYZ, or you used to be so fun. That's definitely been a difficult side of bettering myself and leaning on those things. And I would say that I definitely I'm still navigating this in real time. even with starting my podcast, originally I wanted to have a friend on the podcast almost every single time, but I realized that I wanted to show up consistently for this. And I am the kind of person that when I go into something, I go into it full force, and I could not reliably count on a friend to have time or to prioritize showing up every week or even showing up every other week to come in and help me out and really build this. And that's why I originally decided to start it on my own. I also have decided to do a lot of my episodes solo because I'm prioritizing consistency over having somebody on every week. And as I'm going through adulthood, I've noticed that there is just a lot of navigating things over and over again that you've been navigating even since childhood, and you are never going to have something perfectly worked out. If you want something done consistently, and this is probably, my therapist would absolutely kill me for saying this, but I've realized throughout adulthood that if you want consistency and you want reliability, the only person you can ever truly count on is yourself to show up. And the only person you can truly expect to continuously show up is yourself. And it's not that my friends aren't reliable or they won't show up for me. I know they will, but I can't expect them to, right? The only person I can force to show up for me every single day is me. I knew moving down to Florida, knowing nobody, that I was going to be doing a lot of things alone. So before I moved down here, I actually came to visit for 2 weeks, stayed at a few different resorts and just to check things out. And my family thought it was so crazy. They thought I would come back and be like, I'm not moving down there. This is so weird. But I loved it. And I loved being alone. When I moved down here, I was like 1 year out of a relationship, but it was like a pretty rough relationship, like back and forth, a lot of like toxicity. So we're still seeing each other on and off for a while before I moved down here. And so I wasn't really used to like loneliness or even being alone, right? When I was in Colorado, my family was actually just like 45 minutes from my place. And so a lot of the times I had somebody to go do something with. Like I didn't have to worry about, if I want to go out to dinner, if I want Mexican food, like who's going to go with me? I could call my family. I could call my friends. I had been there forever. So I had like an abundance of people around me that I could reach out to go do stuff with. And when I came to visit Florida, the hardest part for me was I literally went to Bahama Breeze, which at the time was like one of my favorite restaurants before it shut down like everywhere in South Florida. And I went in alone because I wanted to get out of the resort. Like I was having to force myself to get out of the resort to see if I liked the area. This wasn't like just chill, lay by the pool type of trip. Like I needed to go out and do stuff. And I did. Like I literally was going to restaurants by myself. I was going to events by myself. I went to the club and the bar by myself just to get out and see like, do I like this? And I was and to this day, actually, I still meet people off of Bumble BFF. And I know people think that's very odd, but it's hard. It's hard being 26, like in adulthood, and trying to navigate finding friends and people to surround yourself with as you're going through these different changes in life. When I was in college, I had so many friends, always had people to be around. When I was in high school, I had friends, people to be around constantly. But now, like, I work from home. I live by myself. I live in a city that I'm brand new to as of a couple years ago. And so it's really difficult to meet people. And it's insanely difficult, especially in South Florida, to find people that are motivated, looking to better themselves, and not just out here looking to become like OnlyFans models. So that's definitely something I had to learn very quickly, was to be alone and to go to things alone. And it was insanely scary at first, but since I kind of forced myself to do that, it's so much easier now. And honestly, there's some days that I just want to go to the bar and have a drink by myself. Like, not like the bar, I mean like Taco Craft, like a restaurant. I just want to go sit down, have some tacos and a margarita by myself and not feel the pressure to like go out after, you know? There's so many times that I'm just like, wow, I really could chill. It's actually so funny that I'm talking about doing things on my own. I literally was just looking up what time church starts on Saturday because I'm hanging out with some friends tonight, and this is so unrelated, but recently I've been sleeping in late, and so I want to prioritize going to church, and so I'm going to church tonight. And all the girls want to hang out later today, but they don't want to go to church with me, so I'm going solo, which I actually prefer. Church is one of those things that I actually prefer to go to solo. I feel like that's definitely a conversation for later, but I love going to church by myself. I have kind of jumped a couple churches since I've been down here, but I found one that I really love. So anyways, a lot of people think it's very odd that a lot of people think that it's very odd that I like doing things alone, and many people would definitely look at my day-to-day and be like, wow, she's really busy, but like, it's kind of sad. And it's not. I promise you it's not. I really love being alone. I love taking care of myself, working on self-improvement, building myself up, hanging out with my dog, being able to do whatever I want without having to answer to anybody or have somebody tag along. I'm very confident in being able to go out and do these things by myself. I don't have to have somebody. And that's where I really think like you kind of fall into a rock and a hard place between being alone and being lonely. So there are moments where it gets lonely, and that's, everybody has moments in their lives, even if they're surrounded by a bunch of people, where they're very lonely. But I would not qualify when you are bettering yourself being lonely. I think there are times when you're alone. There's times where you have to grow not only in your self-improvement, whether that is being healthier or starting a business, but also you have to improve your self-esteem and your confidence in being alone. A lot of things that I do on a day-to-day basis are centered in, is this making me happy? Is this building my self-esteem? Is this building my confidence? And a lot of what I was doing before was not doing that. Going out with a bunch of friends, even if they're hyping me up and telling me what to do and telling me to talk to this guy, or I'm getting hit on this guy, even though it looks good for my self-esteem, it's not. It's not good for your self-esteem. And the worst, the absolute, oh my gosh, it literally still gives me like PTSD. The like hangover guilt. Even if you did nothing wrong, but you're a little hungover, and the absolute like shame and just disgusting feeling that you have, that absolutely is like my worst nightmare. That is like in my top 3 horror movies for sure. Also, as I mentioned earlier, I think these periods of being alone and isolation are temporary, right? There have been, throughout the different like growth timelines in my life, I meet new people that fit the like who I am at that time. And I don't think that, I mean, obviously we hope that we have friends that can be in our lives forever. I think everybody wants friends and people that have been with them since childhood and are ride or dies, and we all have those people. But I also don't think like everybody can't go with you, right? That's a big saying. Everybody can't go with you, especially when you're growing and as you're reaching the top. And as you're going through these different phases in life, there's people that come into your life that fit that phase and that help you during that phase in your life. And there have been friends in my life that have come and go, and without there being like some like huge fallout or, oh, I outgrew them, they were just there for that period of my life where I was really focused on XYZ. And so there are these periods of isolation, but really what it is you're finding that next group of people or that next setting that you're meant to be in, and that's going to help improve the next step of your life. I think when I went through these periods of loneliness, especially early in my 20s, now I'm very comfortable when I go through these periods of loneliness. I think I'll come back to that. But earlier in my 20s, I really struggled with these periods of loneliness. It felt like I was doing something wrong, or it really like beat up my self-esteem in the aspect of like, oh, people don't want to be around me, or I have no friends, or XYZ. And really that wasn't the case. It was more of I had to do some like working on myself, and it wasn't even like working on myself of, oh, these people don't want to be around me because I was self-sabotaging. It wasn't that aspect. It was more of I knew I was working on myself, and these people no longer wanted to be around that, because I think when you're growing and you're around people that aren't growing, it makes them feel not necessarily like guilt, but it makes them feel a pressure around, I have to better myself, and if I don't better myself, then I can't really be around this person. I don't fit in with this person if I don't better myself. It's more of a pressure, right? Because if you're around people that have different priorities than you, that are better in theory, right? Like if I said, oh, I go to the gym 4 times a week, but this person only goes once a week, right? You're going to feel the pressure between those two. And I think that's where a lot of the times you feel like you're doing something wrong because these people start dropping out of your life. But really, it's the pressure that they are feeling because of what you're doing. So being surrounded by a million people may feel better in theory, but realistically, these points of self-isolation are where it's not necessarily, a lot of people say that's where you grow. You're already growing, and that's why you're in that isolation. It's kind of, if growth is linear, right, you're kind of in the middle. You're in the middle when you're in that self-isolation place, because people are starting to drop off. They can only reach a certain point before they feel that pressure, and they're not willing to step up to the plate. And I think that's something that people don't regularly talk about, is when you're bettering yourself, the pressure that other people feel. And that's why they fall off. And I think that goes back to my earlier point about people coming into your life when they're meant to be. And a lot of the times when people talk about growth, they expect that they're just going to continue to gain XYZ, and I should be given XYZ. And as I grow, it's going to be linear and I will get XYZ. But growth really isn't linear. And a lot of people that come into your life, a lot of things that come into your life, they're not meant to be there forever. And they come and go as and play their place in your life as they're meant to. And a lot of the times it's hard to watch people fall out of your life. It's also really exciting because you know you're growing, and the next point in your life is going to be great. Not everybody's meant to be in your life forever. Some people play a part in your life to help you grow into something. Some people are a test to see whether you fall into the same bullshit that you're used to. And growth is really, it's hills and valleys, but you're on your way to the top. I think if anybody like hikes, a lot of the times during a hike, there's points where you're like, oh, yay, we're going downhill. We must be getting close to the top. But really, you have another 4 miles to climb upwards. And it's supposed to be like that. It's supposed to be difficult. It's supposed to be cumbersome, and people play a part in in your life where they're meant to. And some people are meant to be in your life long term. Some people aren't. Losing people out of your life is not always a bad thing. Sometimes it's a blessing. And, you know, the law of equilibrium states that when you lose something, you're supposed to gain something. So if you've been feeling lonely lately, maybe it just means you're growing. Maybe it means keep freaking going. Or maybe if you have this turning in your stomach where you're like, dang, I really just don't want to go out. I really just don't want to do this. Maybe pick up a new hobby. Try something in self-improvement, because a lot of the times your body and your mind and God will tell you when it's time to go to the next level. And it's not always very clear. Sometimes it can just be like a repeated feeling of, wow, I feel like I'm doing the same thing. Like, I feel like I'm just going through the motions and I need to level up. And that might be the perfect time to try something uncomfortable.